I recently had the opportunity to go and revisit an old art space that I used to spend a lot of time in 2017, my last year of school. So this was in a garage at my sister's house back in the day, and when she moved out, we'd heard that the new owners were planning on painting over everything. I was always disappointed in the documentation that I'd had of this place because I'd never took enough photos or good enough photos at the time. But strangely, I saw on Facebook that the tenants who were living here decided to move out and leave the garage open with free stuff for people to come in and take. And I took that as my opportunity to come in and take some more photos and video. So the story of why the garage was transformed was because I had an 18th birthday coming up, and me and my cousin Cullen wanted a hot spot to throw a party. Shoutouts Cullen for helping with a lot of the paint as well. We spent a lot of time in here. We dubbed the garage the bakery because of a rolling pin that I found tucked in the corner behind the roller door. It just felt like a sign, so I ended up tying up the rolling pin right in front of the centerpiece. I always found the name funny because it sort of implies that some seedy stuff was going on in the garage. Of course, it doesn't help that the wall of words makes the place look like a smack den. But really it was just a place to chill out after school, have a couple drinks every once in a while. And I think we were just feeling pretty bored at that point in time as well, hanging around waiting for our school lives to finish, so it was a good project for us to keep busy. So that's pretty much the backstory of the bakery. Now I'm going to be talking about more of the artistic side of things, why I made different creative choices, methods and techniques that I used, and things that I learned along the way as well. I'll start off with the word wall because I think it's the easiest to explain, and it seems like it's the part of the garage that draws people's attention the most and leaves them with the most questions. I actually had a message on Instagram about a year ago. I wrote my Instagram handle up on the wall, and they hit me up asking me what it was all about. It sounds like the people living in the house were trying to decipher it, figure out the story behind it. So here it is. Before we even decided to pimp the garage, the previous tenants had already spray painted on their wall, and they did a horrible job. It was ugly as hell. So you can see all of the grey, white, and the fat cap black on the wall, so anything that's fat font like the FTW, that was all previous tenants, and it was just ugly as hell. And I want a dope spot to have a party, so I'm not going to paint over that giant concrete wall. What's something else I can do? I'm just going to paint a whole bunch of words over top until it's a jumble mess, and maybe it will look good. And in my opinion, it does not look good, but it's interesting to look at, which is the most important part, I think. The main way that I'd be choosing words to put on the wall is just I'd have my music in, just vibe out, write down some lyrics, or pick out certain words that stood out to me, or feelings it evoked, maybe things that had happened during the day. Even just going back there, I could spot some of the words that came from different songs.
Only God can judge me. Boogie with the hoodie. You gotta fight. Say code 45. 3 a.m. in the morning. Drop them off in the lake for the cops to find them.
There's also some in-jokes up there with people that I was around at the time, and of course just random doodles, absolutely no meaning behind them at all. Just space fillers really, all I wanted to do was fill that wall up. And this is something that would show up in a lot of my art as well over the years. Definitely a lot of the time through laziness, just using words to fill up space. But the more that I've actually done this and spent time going through the words and things like that, you realise it's sort of a form of abstract expressionism, like words that didn't mean anything at the time when I was writing them down. But in some funny way, they're sort of words that leak out of your subconscious and maybe tell a story that you didn't realise was there. But it's also subjective as well between viewers. Some people might be seeing different messages with words and the way that they interact with each other, I think that's why that technique is so effective and eye-catching, because seeing different words that aren't in sentence, it sort of creates an unfinished jigsaw puzzle in your mind. So in a way, it's just an absurdist art style, but with the words instead of images. Alright, I know I said that was going to be easy to explain, I was wrong, but now we're going to be moving on to my least favourite things. I really struggled with these panels here on the wall. Me and Cullen did paint them flat black and we wanted to fill them up, but we ran out of time before the party, so this is what we ended up with. This eye right here is absolutely atrocious. I remember I was building myself up for it to be the coolest thing ever. And pretty much as soon as I did the spray paint outline, I knew it was going to be trash. I tried my hardest to do what I could, and it did not really work out. I remember we didn't have a fine tip brush, so I had to use the end of a stick to do those white outlines in paint. I didn't have a job at the time and I'd already spent pretty much all my money on spray paint, so I had to get kind of creative to try and finish this off. Then of course we have the uninspired anarchy symbol panel and my school club logo, which actually kind of turned out pretty sick. If only I hadn't written the word Vernon, I think it would have been fine. Then on the other side of the stencil wall, there's actually 2 panels that were painted by one of the last tenants, and I always thought they were pretty sick. Never wanted to change them, very nice. Yeah, push push. It's okay. There's not really a whole lot to say about the centerpiece other than it was just normal concrete wall before that, and I think we were going to just draw random pictures on it. But once we sussed out the name of the place and the general vibe, we decided to paint over it with a leftover bucket of paint that was already in there. Then I just sprayed up the name of it. And I believe the baker himself was actually like off the cuff. I didn't plan on how he was going to look. I just put him up. I remember it not turning out how I wanted it to, but I think it does its job. Looks good. So the last part of the garage to talk about is the stencil wall, which actually started out as just brown board that me and Cullen painted over. I think making stencils was the thing that upskilled me the most in this experience. I was spending a lot of time making them, and towards the end I was actually getting pretty good at doing it. The whole reason I started making stencils was because I wanted a misfit skull on the wall. I'd made 2 freehand stencils which turned out pretty bad before I finally sussed out how to do it properly. And I realised that was fun and easy, looks cool, so I'm just going to slap up the wall with a whole bunch of those. But becoming more familiar with the stenciling technique taught me more about the basics of layering and positive and negative space as well. I went through a bit of trial and error with that. You can see in some of the stencils I accidentally cut the colours inverted, so they probably would have turned out a whole lot better if I'd done it the right way. But that's all part of the learning process really. I was spending a lot of my free time outside of school using my laptop as a light box to trace before I even knew what a light box was. And I was getting pretty handy with a scalpel blade as well. This came useful further down the line when I started making stickers and stuff like that. I still have pretty much every single stencil that was used in the bakery. A lot of them have fallen apart by now, but some of them have seen spray paint again, some of them we'll have to see. But I've definitely come back to stenciling a lot in my artwork, whether it be directly stenciling or just masking. Knowing how to do it's actually been really useful to me. And even in a lot of my digital artwork, you can see the influence that stenciling's had upon it. So yeah, I think working on the stencil wall is definitely the part of working on the bakery that helped develop my work in a technical way. It also had some random spray paint doodles on it as well as the Wi-Fi password, which was handy. Those are all just to fill space of course, but that's pretty much the stencil wall. Working on this space was definitely an important part of my artistic development, and I feel pretty privileged to have worked on it at such a young age, being able to transform such a large area and have the time and freedom to really work on this specific toolset. I learned a lot about spray paint and compressed air, and came to find that I really enjoy the effect it gives. Still to this day, it's pretty much my go-to medium. I just really love the unpredictability of it, because you're always going to end up with some overspray, like blobs, spatters, drips, things like that, a lot of fun stuff. And I just find that those imperfections give a piece a lot of character. And when it was all finished, I really think it was a great representation of my artistic style at the time and a reflection of my personality as well. It really helped me get a lot of the black and white work out of my system, so from there I branched off with more colours and things like that, but I still do love a good black and white. Being able to go back was a surreal experience because I thought it had long been painted over. It was cool to find out other people had enjoyed the space. Shout out Zane, Nathan and Faith, good on yous. There was quite a few new markings in there, which is what it's all about. Someone was doing some Hundies workouts. But yeah, it was really interesting going back because it felt like I'd never left, to be honest. Like, it felt like going back into your childhood bedroom where everything is exactly where you left it. It was really weird because it felt like fully seeing a long lost friend. I was so comfortable in there, it was like, felt like my soul was in those walls somehow. And that's why I think it was really cool that no one ever painted over it, because I feel like the people that became familiar with their garage, they somehow like met me without meeting me, you know? It sounds weird to say out loud, but honestly, that's the impression that it gave me when I went back. But you don't want to hear about none of that. You want to know how did the party go. And I'll tell you this. Things got broken. People got hurt. I saw faces I'd never seen in my life. Bottles everywhere. Place got shut down early. And there was plenty of spew to mop up in the morning. That's how you know it was a good night.